feet on the ground. We're going to take 3 deep breaths into your nose, out through your mouth, into your nose, out through your mouth. One more. Breathe in, breathe out. Thank you so much for being here and being patient with us as we troubleshot our projector situation. And like, it's kind of just like real life, you know, like sometimes things don't work out the way that you plan, no matter how good intentioned you are and how much you try to plan ahead. Things will happen, and so the thing that makes it a lot easier is when you have a really great squad that will rally around the issue and be able to move everything forward. So I'm really grateful to everybody that helps to troubleshoot this situation and brought this television all the way from up the block, and that's what community is, you know? And that's what we're here to do, is to build more community. So, introductions first. My name is Nina Parks. I forgot we're filming. Thanks. So, a little background story on myself. I was born and raised in San Francisco, Excelsior, Mission. I'm 34 years young, so I'm still kind of a baby and everything, but not quite, you know, like a young OG, you know, made it this far, you know. I grew up in programs out here. I was sent to a bunch of different after-school programs, and it was like through my education and witnessing community being built, and my elders that I come to want to organize this space for this very unique point in history that we're in, right? We have seen our communities devastated by the enforcement of the war on drugs. We've seen resources being shifted out of our communities and into punitive measures for our community versus helping to give more resources, access to education, things that will actually help us build a foundation to learn how to navigate through this very complex system that we're all a part of, right? So through the capitalism, through the institutionalization of our education system, which neglects to teach us our histories, right? So today we will explore the history of the war on drugs. We have some amazing people to present us with a very large scope, and then we'll have a panel to take it really close into what it looks like within our own communities, and then we'll have some time to build with each other and create a new vision.
And in the mission, District 5 in the Western Addition, as well as District 11, which is actually the outer mission and also the outer part of Visitation Valley. War on drugs has, to me, when it comes to families, you know, taken away the male figure or the female figure of the household. You figured between the 70s up to now, how many generations? In the mid-'80s, cannabis was looked at in the community as cigarettes. Everybody smoked weed. Back in the 80s, cocaine came in. Crack cocaine came into the community, put a dark cloud in a lot of our communities locally. But the impact, it caused, I mean, all the violence. You figure of all the violence, right? I believe in 2006, the DA's office put out 84 to 88% of all homicides that were caused by violent with a handgun were all dropouts from high school. Cannabis, you know, I was looking at the video and it talked about it made people violent. But to me, when crack cocaine came into the scene, that's where, you know, a lot of the violence that we still have to this day was caused, to me personally, from what I saw, was caused by crack cocaine and the impact it had on the community. Before, in the 70s, growing up in Hunters Point, you know, you had your folks who smoked, who snort, right? But they were designated in certain areas, and people in the community knew. When crack cocaine came in, about half of our folks became addicts. It put a dark cloud. You had, you know, folks selling all their possessions, right? And before you know it, brothers and sisters who grew up together because of the money, because the cash flow was much faster, all of a sudden became enemies. Our neighborhood, once upon a time, all of Hunters Point was together, but before you knew it, it started to become segregated, right, and divided into different sets. First it was, it was Hunters Point, Sunnydale, Fillmore, and then it became Harbor Road, West Point, Crusader, right? In Sunnydale, it was all of Sunnydale before you knew it. You had the up and down. Same thing in the Mission, right? Before you knew it, all of the Mission, especially in the 24th Street corridor, which includes Army Street, and the extension out to Valencia Gardens, right? All of a sudden it became front and back streets, right? But to me, the impact that the war on drugs had in our community up to this day, and that's why when I'm looking at the word healing, how do we heal a generational, we've had like at least, during my lifetime, at least 4 or 5 generations of young people, young males and females who grew up with one parent in a broken home, right? And the violence that was caused from the mid-'80s, right? Because before then you had violence that related to drug sales, but when the crack cocaine took over, it became more epidemic. It became a crisis up to this point. Now it has evolved, right, to where these young people now, in this third or fourth generation from that time, the morals are gone, the values are gone, the fabric of what a family should be, it's gone, it has disappeared. When I grew up, everybody in the neighborhood took care of each other. It didn't matter if you were Samoan, Black, Latin, whatever. If they knew your family, you was gonna get checked. If you was doing wrong, they knew the kids that were playing sports and go to school. I was one of them types. If I was hanging around the wrong spot of the hill, the OGs or the older folks would say, hey, what you doing over here, bruh? Let's take your little butt back to school. But all of that, from the 80s to now, has evolved into where no one cares anymore. And why? To me, it's because of the war on drugs. Taking away the male figure of the family, the head of the family. Young men growing up, instead of idolizing those that are going to school or whatnot, they, because of circumstances, idolize folks that were making the fast money, right? Think about all of the scholars and all of the athletes that we have lost. San Francisco used to be a hub, right, for sports. Now we're the last stop for any college when it comes to recruitment. I coach, a youth football. Man, between the ages of 5 to 13 years old, we have some of the best talent nationwide. But by the time they hit 12, we lose them at 14 because the streets, going back to what I said, the root cause is the war on drugs and the impact that it has made through the different generations up to now, and we're still feeling it. Healing, it's gonna take a long time, right? Thank you.
You bring up so many real points, that one, that it's going to take generations to address the issues. And, if we're just studying history, especially because this is Black History Month, right? We saw those tactics of removing the male of the household, right? Breaking down the family structure in order to make populations controllable during slavery. Right, and we found that the war on drugs was a tool that they used to maintain certain systems, right, to be able to push people into prisons and use them as prison labor, slave labor, to maintain these constructs, right? So of course these are huge, ginormous issues, right? And obviously nothing that one person can ever attack alone, but as we continue to talk about it together, as we continue to build community within an industry that's gonna have some resources, we can start thinking about how do we rebuild infrastructures? How do we support programs and people, that are working in the community to be that male figure, right? To be able to have the young people go to you and they know that you're there, That's how I know people feel about Rodney, about you, John. That's how I feel about Rudy whenever I've been in like a place, like I can show up in Rudy's office. I don't know how many times I've broken down and cried in Rudy's office and Rudy just prayed with me, And seriously, and like I wouldn't be doing this work right now because like when things happened with my family, I went to Rudy first. And he said to me, this is what happened in your life. You know, he's like, you can cry about it, you can feel all that it feels, but you're gonna have to grow from here. You're not a kid anymore, you know, and you're gonna have to step up and do what you have to do, you know, to be able to make things right. And I took that to heart, and so I'm thankful for you guys, but we wanna continue to strengthen the work that you guys do. Rodney, for yourself, because you grew up in this community as well, and you're stepping into a new space, like how have you seen, do you agree with John about how you've seen the impacts of the war on drugs, and like what, from your own experience, you know, what has it been like for you?
I mean, I can't duplicate what was said. I mean, I experienced exactly those sentiments. I lived that life, born and raised here in Bayview, Hunters Point, going from Deborah Rock, Alice Griffin, moving to West Point, moving back to Sunnydale, coming back to Hunters Point. So being a product of my community, you know, that became a everyday thing for me. So survival was the key. Survival has always been the key. So I go back to saying, along with what John has just shared with you, for many of our lives story, you know, we have been fighting for humanity. You know what I'm saying? We've been through that struggle, and those things is still occurring today. We have been fighting for freedom. I mean, in the same situation, war on drugs, and those are things that's going on today. We have been fighting for our rights. I mean, you know, those things are still going on today. And what I like to put emphasis on is that survival tactic. You know, those relationships that we're missing with our family ones, with our surrounding friends, with folks that actually can show us not just love but nurture, and how to utilize that to share it amongst the people that's around you, so we all can grow. That respect has been gone. So I'm here today just to not speak on that. I thank John for actually sharing that. We both grew up in, you know, in Hunters Point and West Point together, so we know a lot of the same peoples, and we have seen a lot of the same stories. McAteer alumni, and seeing a lot of those things happening, and still today we fight not through just getting folks jobs, job trainings, educating them and empowering them on just civil rights and how they can get involved and change the system within, but you got to be a part. Bringing them to the table, showing them those dynamics of how to orchestrate through this myriad that not only San Francisco, but the whole California, the whole world has. And being empowered with that, and walking, not only being walked through that trench and showing others folks how to do it, not only one, not only two, but tens and hundreds at a time, we're able to get a few folks through to follow that path and start making righteous movements. I'm a part of that. Rudy's a part of that. John's a part of that. I mean, Toriano's a part of that. Rob's a part of that. I can go on with many stories. Kim Mitchell's a part of that. Harry O's a part of that. I mean, I can just go on down a list of true leaders within this community that has done a number of things that harmed our community because we had to survive. I sold drugs. I got caught up when I was 13. You know, so those things happened to me because, yes, I had a child when I was, 15, 16 in high school. I was the only kid in high school with my kid on the football team. So my struggle was real. Single parent mom with two boys. And it's a blessing now because her two boys are very successful. You know, Earl Hampton, known as Spunky, he has a bar and grill that he just put up, owner, and worked for PG&E. Myself, a proud member of this community, advocate, have done a lot of public servant, and we're doing more just to activate minds. And I'm here to say the healing process starts right here. This is the healing process. What we're doing. Rudy is producing thousands a month of little Rudies. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? From United Players, strictly United Players, UP. And I'm inspired on that because we need some type of that love over here, and he bring it. We're bringing a lot of intellect and knowledge on how to smash in on city government, on doing what we want and organizing. That's what we do. So together, Kim Mitchell is there with a stamp saying, hey, let's run these programs. Let's bring the money back home. Let's teach our people and put them in these positions so we can educate and they can be the next leaders. So with this, and the healing processes are all here. And the inspiration about me being in this business is so great because, you know, I was always inspired by, you know, having cannabis, having flowers, having pictures. I have an art gallery right on 3rd, myself and Brandon. And all that is therapeutic. It's all healing. And with that, we have actually started curving the mindset, the attitudes, the energy just on that block between LaSalle and McKinney. The merchants are saying it, the people are saying it, they're coming to see black art, all local artists' art that's on the wall. They're able to come in and express themselves, cry, talk, give some energy, share some love, take in data. That's what we're missing. Folks just don't listen. Take in data and do things. So with that, I've just been sitting around thinking for the last few days, and a few things that have caught my attention, and what I've been inspired by is a World Hemp Operation Project. Everything needs to be ran, made, created, developed, constructed, ate, lived, breathed, washed off of hemp. And I think we can start that right here. And with this type of energy in my mindset, that's what's going on with that operation, that project. Yeah, we can start reaching out to world leaders in China and Ukraine and Russia. Yeah, we can assemble a working, helping organization of people that helps others to actually be trained in uniform like you're doing today, so we can talk with congressmen, talk with hopefully President Kamala Harris, talk with folks that's other in the city that actually can help our agenda. And that ultimate goal of a World Hemp Operation Project is having 25% of the world, like I said, constructed, built, and developed off of hemp. And we need to start right here, because if we start that, that's the fertilization of who we are. Now we control this economical system and add to the engine that's here today, but on a healthy side. So those that's been involved in sustainable living, we want to push that. And ideas I have written down, I would like to work with you on that, but that's why I've been inspired. That's where I'm at today. And I'm working with my business partner that's teaching me a lot about the cannabis industry, which I'm developing a lot. And the things that I can share is definitely relationships and community building.
Are we taking questions?
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm with the hemp situation. Did you guys know that they planted hemp outside of Chernobyl and outside of in Japan, next to where Fukushima was? Because actually, hemp, the roots soak up heavy metals and toxins, right? And as we know, there's a naval shipyard out here that has been causing a lot of health issues. So if we're talking about healing and ways that we can actually use this plant to continuously helping our community, and eventually maybe have it into an industrial hemp space, right? And then we can do some more stuff with that. Obviously, a lot of research needs to be done, a lot of support, a lot of advocacy. So if you're down, this is your point, ma'am, right here. Just to kind of reiterate what you're talking about with the leadership also, right? An advisor to Richard Nixon, his name is John L. Richmond. I always pronounce his last name wrong, so sorry for butchering that. He said, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war, or illegal to be against blacks. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, then we could criminalize both heavily. We could disrupt their communities, we can arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know that we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did, right? And so just like you saw when we were watching, to tie everything together, right? Well, we were watching the statistics on how previous leaders used racial fears and rhetoric to be able to make those laws. We're no longer allowed to say the same thing to be able to advocate for our rights back, right? So we have to be armed with data instead. Right? But there are pathways, and we can still move all of this forward, and which moves us down the line to Brandon as a business owner, right? Or as someone that's an expert in business working with Rodney and knowing that this is the way that we got to this space as far as having to navigate out of the impacts of the war on drugs. What are you hoping for as a business owner, right? And as a partner with an equity applicant, because I think the conversation needs to continue happening with business partners that are partnering with Equity Applicants on how you engage that process, right? Because we're looking at some predatory relationships that have that have come up, right? And it's really that there's not enough conversation, right? Because people will only do what they think the community will allow, right? So for yourself, what is your value system in approaching that?
So Rodney and I were the first partnership with Equity before he was even qualified, because I was with the San Francisco Cannabis Equity Working Group, and we helped, push through the equity program. And then I already, kind of had the foresight. I was like, all right, this is happening. And a lot of people didn't, especially like a year ago, didn't realize that it was happening and didn't want, as the statistics show, there's a group of 80% of the people that I talked to weren't really keen on this equity program idea, right? And so I jump-started it in the sense where I hit up Rodney, and we had met at when Malia Cohen did the town hall. Some of you guys may remember that. So we met there, and he's like, dude, I heard you in the cannabis thing. I was like, I've been looking for you because I thought you were Rudy, but, the same name R, and you guys do kind of the same thing, but you're in the different neighborhoods, you know what I mean? So I just basically assumed you were the same person, but you're not. So good to meet you finally, because I'm pretty sure Rudy's not black, but... So it was kind of a funny situation, but we ended up partnering up, and 40% CEO, and I convinced my partners that this is the way to go. And this is before he was verified as an equity applicant. So this is 6 months before, right? And I got on a call with a lot of the retailers, and I basically said that over the phone. I said, I'm giving Rodney Hampton 40% CEO of my company tomorrow. He's signing the paperwork right now, and it was like crickets. Like 30 people on the phone, crickets, and they're like, what? You're giving up that much of your company? You're doing what, right? And so everybody was thinking incubation, and now you're hearing, and a lot of you guys are having a problem with incubation, but I think that the main goal that I'm trying to impression on you is that the partnership that I created with Rodney is the real situation that you want for yourself. Incubation is nice, right, and can help you, but I call it like the Cronus effect. Cronus ate his children, right? Because of, if you know that story, right? And he was the father, right? And the fact, I don't want to tell you the story, but the fact of the matter is that an incubator does not really have the incentive to help you be successful, right? They need to give you money or give you technical assistance or give you space for a period of time so they can open their business, right? But there is no long-term. In 3 years, what is the incentive for them, right? And so if you don't have a partnership with somebody that's helping you lead that's helping you figure out, right, how to navigate these waters, because you can get a partnership and then still be incubated, because I think that you need to find a good partnership first. You need to find somebody like myself, like Nina, and they're out there, you have community leaders already, Rudy, the people that are sitting at this table that can help you navigate these waters, or at least find a partner that can kind of balance your, I call it like strategic partnerships, to where you want to make sure your circles touch, but they don't overlap, right? So where your circles touch are these congruent things to where your expertise kind of starts to come to an end, but you're interested, their expertise grows. Right, and you can ask them questions, and then where their expertise kind of starts to drizzle out, that's where you come in, right? Community leadership, right? With me and Rodney, I'm the technical assistance guy. I know how to run a cannabis business. I know how to open one. I know all the politics and all that nonsense, but he knows that too. He knows it on the community end, right? And I said this at the Small Business Commission when we were trying to get the 90-day guarantee, which, thank you, Office of Cannabis. You guys can thank the Office of Cannabis for locking down a loose agreement with planning, because they won't create a planning code or anything like that. Once you're in the planning, you can get, within 120 to 90 days, you'll get a planning review, which is huge. That could take up to 2 years. So that's a big piece, right? And so when it comes down to these types of relationships, right, I've been pushing to do that, but also it was amazing to see Rodney go, I know Ed talked about it a couple times too, where I don't know if you guys ever seen Rodney or Rudy show up to like to a public comment session with the group in tow, with the T-shirts. It's a very powerful thing, and to have these community leaders, man, are very important, right? And so that's why when I came to the Bayview, I decided that if I'm going to open a dispensary, I need to work with somebody like him. And the community has accepted that in a better way. When I first came here, everybody's like, oh, Brandon, he's that weed guy. We're not really sure about him, right? And then I get Rodney in there with the gallery, Miss Perry. We start getting people engaged in the community. A lot of people are coming through, right? And we get the art up, and it just, bam, it just started to happen. You know what I mean? And it happened in the right way. And it's because I wasn't in control of how it's happening, right? It was somebody from the community. I mean, I saw him doing barbecues out front. I'm like, dude, what? Are we going to get a ticket? Like, dude, what are you doing out in front with the barbecues, And like, come to find out, the president of the EDOT was like, dude, love the barbecues, Love how Rodney's helping people out, feeding people from the community, you know what I mean? And so it's like, these types of things, like, if I was out there doing that, then there might have been a problem. But because he's out there doing that, it's a part of the community engages, right? And the people that he's brought to the space, like people from Bayview that don't live here anymore because they can't afford to live, but came back, like Yovan and the hair products, right? I didn't even know the event was going on. Yeah, like 40 women from Bayview come to our space and just finally get to kick it right down 3rd Street, enjoy themselves, They hadn't been to Bayview in a long time, you could tell, and they really enjoyed themselves. And it was an opportunity to engage in the community that they grew up in, that had been kind of pushed out of. And I think that with the healing part, right, it wasn't necessarily an accident. I definitely was thinking I want to do an art gallery and I want to do something like this. But I think that's important when you're opening a dispensary now, that this should be kind of a model that you need to do. You need to open your doors up, as I was told before, let the boogeyman out of the closet. There's a lot of people that are scared of this, but if you open the door and go, look, we're just painting in here, kids can come in, like, it's just a space. We plan to be just like any other business. We're just regular people from the community trying to create a business that you guys can enjoy and also bring more traction to this community in a positive way, more jobs, more foot traffic, more money to the community, right? And so that's what I would say in your partnerships, right? I know incubation's a problem. We're working on it. We're trying to do different things to help with that. But the key factor that I want you to take away from our situation is to try to find a partnership. A partnership is key. A partnership is something solid that you are now married to that person to some degree, right? They're stuck with you. And so they have to help you. And that's a fact. It's in their best interest to do so. Right? Incubator, not best interest to do so yet, which is something we're working on, right? But the partnership, that's the part of it, right? That's that first step, right? Is this person a strategic partner that I can work with and be with for 10 years and is going to help me and that I can give and take from, And so I want to instill that fact that the partnership was the key, and now everybody's got a partnership, you can see, and there's a lot of people being helped and getting opportunities, and those are the people that are at the front of the line right now. And those are the people that are moving along quicker, right? Because they have those partnerships and they have those people that have the incentive to push them along, And so that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Dang, you got claps. That's what's up. All right, Eugene, you ready? All right, you ready? So, Eugene, you've been tasked with helping the Office of Cannabis get up and running. You came to San Francisco from the East Coast. So how have you seen just like the difference between the coast also? I think that's an interesting perspective as well, because you're out here working on it, but your experience has also been observing and doing research on the East Coast, right? If you want to also explain your background, that'd be great too.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. I think one of the things that, just for folks who kind of don't know my background, who might not be interested, a little bit more. Okay, so I essentially got interested in cannabis through my interest in mass incarceration, right? So I worked for a small criminal justice advocacy organization. That was the primary reason I started to think about additional research